and they took both of my daughters.
19-year-old Deja wanted to be a nurse. That's why she was in college. Her sister, 20-year-old Abbaney, was her best friend. The two died together in Deja's dorm room Monday afternoon. Abbaney's 2-year-old son, Alan, was shot in the leg. He survived. The family wanted us to show video of baby Alan so people could see just how cruel the person who did this really is.
A 2-year-old boy is crying for his mommy, but mommy can't answer because she's lying in a pool of blood on a college dorm room floor. Her sister is dead right next to her. And the little boy, he's bleeding too. Shot in the leg by the same monster who just executed both women in cold blood. They took both of my daughters. Timothy Matz whispers through tears. But what he doesn't know yet is that his grandbaby witnessed every single second of their brutal murders. This happened on February 3rd, 2020, at Texas A&M University Commerce, a place parents pay thousands of dollars to keep their kids safe. A place with security cards, locked doors, and campus police. None of it mattered, because the killer, he walked right through the front door using the building's own security system. The same man who had been arrested for beating one of these women just days earlier. The same violent predator a judge decided to release for $15,000. What you're about to discover will shatter your faith in every institution you trust to protect your family. Because this massacre was 100% preventable. 19-year-old Deja Matz had her entire life mapped out. She was going to be a nurse. She was going to save people, heal the sick, make a difference in this world. She'd chosen public health as her major because she genuinely wanted to protect others from harm. The irony is sickening. Her sister Abbaney wasn't just family. She was Deja's best friend. At 20 years old, Abbaney was working hard to build a stable life for her little boy. These sisters supported each other through everything. They laughed together, cried together, dreamed together. The weekend before they died, the whole family had gathered for a birthday party. It was supposed to be a celebration. Abbaney had driven her sister back to campus after the party, planning to spend just one night in the dorm with her son. One innocent night visiting her best friend. That family gathering became their last. That innocent sleepover became their death sentence. And the bond that made them inseparable, it made them perfect targets for a monster who wanted to destroy everything Abbaney loved. If you think this story deserves to be heard, then prove it right now. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because families like the Matts are counting on people exactly like you to demand justice. They're counting on you to make sure their daughters aren't forgotten. And I know some of you are sitting there watching this, getting all the details, feeling all the emotions, but you won't subscribe. You'll consume this content, maybe even share it, but you won't take 2 seconds to support the channel that's fighting for these victims. So go ahead. Tell me in the comments why you think Deja and Abbaney don't deserve your subscription. Explain to their grieving father why his daughter's story isn't worth 30 seconds of your time. I'm genuinely curious what excuse you'll come up with. Because while you're making excuses, there are other families out there right now who could be next. Other sisters who could die because the system failed them too. Meet Jacques Smith, 21 years old, and already a seasoned predator. This wasn't some college kid who suddenly snapped. This was a calculated killer with a rap sheet that should have terrified anyone paying attention. In April 2016, Smith pleaded guilty to robbery. But here's the kicker. They reduced his charges and gave him 5 years deferred adjudication. Translation: they went easy on him. Then in January 2018, he was sentenced for another robbery to 5 years community supervision. This man was literally walking free while serving time for violent crimes. But Smith's specialty wasn't just random violence. It was terrorizing women who tried to leave him. Domestic violence experts have a name for guys like Jacques Smith. They call them intimate partner killers. These predators follow a predictable pattern: control, escalate, and when the woman tries to escape, they destroy her. Abbaney had already lived through Smith's violence. She'd been beaten by him before. She tried to get away from him. And just days before he murdered her, Smith was arrested for assaulting her again. This wasn't a lover's quarrel. This was attempted murder practice. Every single red flag was waving. Every warning sign was flashing. Smith had shown the world exactly who he was and exactly what he was capable of. The question isn't whether he was dangerous. The question is why nobody stopped him. Here's where the story gets absolutely infuriating. After Smith was arrested for assaulting Abbaney, some judge looked at his violent history and decided $15,000 was enough to keep the public safe. $15,000 to release a man who had just beaten his ex-girlfriend and was already on probation for robbery. Let that sink in. This judge knew Smith had a pattern of violence. They knew he just physically assaulted the mother of a 2-year-old child. They knew he was supposed to be serving time for previous crimes.
I think it was like a coward move. I mean, somebody would do something like that, you know what I'm saying? My daughters were fun, uplifting, had plenty of friends, nice folks, you know what I'm saying? They took both of my daughters.
15 grand and you're free to go. But here's the part that will make your blood boil. Smith was likely violating his probation when he assaulted Abbaney. That should have meant automatic jail time, no bond, no questions asked. But the system failed to connect the dots. Different agencies, different databases, different people who couldn't be bothered to do their jobs. So instead of sitting in a cell where he belonged, Smith was handed a deadly window of opportunity. He had time to plan, time to stalk, time to figure out exactly how he was going to destroy the woman who dared to leave him. The system literally gave him the keys to commit murder. Texas A&M University Commerce sold parents a beautiful lie. They promised secure buildings, controlled access, 24/7 campus police protection. They marketed themselves as a safe haven where thousands of students could focus on their education without fear. Parents like Timothy Matz and Vanessa Calderon trusted that promise. They paid tuition believing their daughter would be protected by multiple layers of security. Key card access, locked elevators, trained staff. It all sounded foolproof on paper. But here's the sick twist that makes this whole tragedy even more devastating. The very security system designed to keep killers out became Smith's weapon of choice. That temporary key card issued to Abbaney for her innocent overnight visit, it became his golden ticket to murder. The university's own security protocols handed a violent predator direct access to his victims. The locked doors meant nothing. The secure elevators were useless. The campus police never saw him coming because the building itself let him walk right through the front door like he belonged there. February 2nd, 2020 started like any other Sunday for the Matz family. Abbaney packed up her 2-year-old son Alan and drove to Texas A&M Commerce to visit her sister. This wasn't unusual. Families visited students all the time. The university even had procedures for temporary guests, complete with key cards for overnight stays. Abbaney followed every rule perfectly. She got her temporary access card through official channels. She planned to spend just one night in Deja's dorm room, giving Alan a chance to see his favorite aunt and letting the sisters catch up on life.
Abbaney did not attend the college. She drove her sister back to school after a big family get-together over the weekend. She and baby Alan were only going to spend one night there.
Because they were just up here. My son had a birthday party, and they was all up here and went back, and this right here happened.
University Police Department, this is Kim.
Police did release a 911 call that was made by a student at the college saying there was a bullet hole in her dorm room.
And there's a hole through my wall, and on the other side directly across, there's a nick in my calendar. So it looks like something was shot through the wall and hit my calendar.
Police arrested Abbaney's ex-boyfriend, 21-year-old Jacques Deshawn Smith, and he's been charged with capital murder. The girl's family says there had been relationship issues, but for now, they want the focus to be on these two beautiful sisters who were full of life and love.
It was just my little booze, my booze.
In Garland, I'm Rebecca Lopez.
The president of the Dallas Police Association is speaking out, saying that the shooting deaths of two sisters at Texas A&M Commerce could have been prevented. Aaron Jones, live for us in Dallas County at the jail to tell us why. Aaron?
Doug, DPA President Mike Mata says last week Jacquees Smith should have never walked out of this jail the way he did after he was arrested for assaulting his ex-girlfriend Abbaney Matz. He was given a $15,000 bond, and Mata says it should have been a lot higher than this given his violent criminal history, including 2 aggravated robbery charges that were later pled down to theft and charges for aggravated robbery evading arrest. Smith was on probation at the time of his arrest last week. An arrest warrant was being worked up for violating it, but before it was issued, he bonded out of jail.
You cannot tell me that there is any justification for a guy that has committed 4 prior violent felonies to be given a $1,500 cash bond release. And this guy got out before that warrant could be activated. When we see something that's broke, the Dallas County justice system has a duty to fix it.
And right now, Smith is in the Hunt County Jail on $2 million bond. This is both for the Texas A&M Commerce murders as well as another murder out of Denton. Reporting live in Dallas, Aaron Jones, CBS 11 News.
For little Alan, this was supposed to be an adventure. Sleeping in Aunt Deja's college room, maybe seeing the campus, spending quality time with the 2 women who loved him most in this world. He was just a baby, innocent, trusting, completely unaware that a monster was hunting his family. The sisters probably stayed up talking, sharing dreams about the future. Deja might have told Abbaney about her nursing classes, her plans to help people. Abbaney might have talked about building a better life for Alan, maybe going back to school herself someday. They had no idea they were spending their last hours together. They had no idea that the security system protecting them had already been compromised. February 2nd, 2020 started like any other Sunday for the Matz family. Abbaney packed up her 2-year-old son Alan and drove to Texas A&M Commerce to visit her sister. This wasn't unusual. Families visited students all the time. The university even had procedures for temporary guests, complete with key cards for overnight stays. Abbaney followed every rule perfectly. She got her temporary access card through official channels. She planned to spend just one night in Deja's dorm room, giving Alan a chance to see his favorite aunt and letting the sisters catch up on life. For little Alan, this was supposed to be an adventure. Sleeping in Aunt Deja's college room, maybe seeing the campus, spending quality time with the 2 women who loved him most in this world. He was just a baby, innocent, trusting, completely unaware that a monster was hunting his family. The sisters probably stayed up talking, sharing dreams about the future. Deja might have told Abbaney about her nursing classes, her plans to help people. Abbaney might have talked about building a better life for Alan, maybe going back to school herself someday. They had no idea they were spending their last hours together. They had no idea that the security system protecting them had already been compromised. Here's where the story becomes absolutely chilling. Somehow, Jacques Smith got his hands on access to Pride Rock Residence Hall. But how? The university has never given a straight answer, and that silence is deafening. Theory 1. Smith followed someone through the doors, but security cameras should have caught that. Theory 2. He somehow cloned or stole Abbaney's temporary key card. Theory 3. And this is the most terrifying possibility. Someone gave him access, either intentionally or through sheer negligence. What we know for certain is that Smith didn't break down doors or smash windows. He didn't trigger any alarms. He walked through that building like he had every right to be there, using the very security system designed to keep predators like him out. Think about how calculated this was. Smith knew exactly where to go, exactly how to get there, exactly when to strike. He'd been planning this massacre, and the university's own security infrastructure became his roadmap to murder. Students living in Pride Rock went to bed that night believing they were safe. They trusted those locked doors, those key card readers, those security protocols. They had no idea that their building had already been infiltrated by a killer who was moving through their hallways like a ghost. The moment Smith swiped that card and heard the lock click open, the building's own system betrayed every single person inside. The very technology meant to protect them had just signed their death warrant. At approximately 10:45 p.m. on February 3rd, 2020, gunshots shattered the quiet of Pride Rock Residence Hall. Students who were studying, sleeping, or just hanging out with friends suddenly found themselves in the middle of a nightmare. Smith had found his targets. Deja and Abbaney were in that dorm room with little Alan when the killer burst through the door. What happened next was pure evil. Smith opened fire on 2 defenseless women and a toddler who couldn't even understand what was happening. Both sisters were killed instantly. But Smith wasn't done. He turned his gun on 2-year-old Alan, shooting the baby in the leg. A child who should have been playing with toys was instead bleeding from a gunshot wound, watching his mother and dad die in front of him. The sound of gunfire sent students into panic mode. One terrified resident called 911, screaming, "There's a hole through my wall." The bullets had been flying so wildly that they'd penetrated into neighboring rooms. Students were barricading themselves behind furniture, texting their families goodbye, not knowing if the shooter was still in the building or if they were next. Some hid in closets. Others crawled under beds. The entire residence hall became a war zone. Campus police rushed to the scene, but it was too late. Smith had already escaped, leaving behind 3 victims, 2 dead sisters and 1 traumatized child who would never be the same. Within minutes of the shooting, Texas A&M Commerce went into full lockdown mode. Emergency alerts blasted across every student's phone. Shelter in place. Armed and dangerous suspect on campus. But for thousands of terrified students, those words felt like a death sentence. Dorm rooms became bunkers. Students were frantically texting their parents, their siblings, anyone who would listen. "There's a shooter in my building. I love you. Pray for me." Social media exploded with desperate pleas for help and tearful goodbye messages from kids who thought they might not see morning. Campus police swarmed the area, but Smith had vanished into the night. He knew the campus, knew the escape routes, knew exactly how to disappear. For 24 agonizing hours, this killer roamed free, while an entire university lived in terror. Parents were driving through the night, desperate to reach their children. The campus that had promised safety had become a hunting ground, and nobody knew where the predator would strike next. Students huddled in their rooms, afraid to sleep, afraid to eat, afraid to even breathe too loudly. Every footstep in the hallway could be the killer coming back. Every door that opened could be their last moment alive. The manhunt was on, but Smith had a head start that could cost more lives. 24 hours after the massacre, police finally tracked down Jock Smith and slapped him with capital murder charges. But here's what makes this arrest even more sickening. They discovered Smith wasn't just a double murderer. He was a serial killer. On New Year's Eve, just 5 weeks before he executed the Matt sisters, Smith had gunned down 18-year-old Stephen Daniels in Dallas. Another young life snuffed out by the same monster who should have been locked up years ago. Think about this timeline. Smith kills Stephen Daniels on December 31st, 2019. Then he assaults Abbaney, gets arrested, and is released on that pathetic $15,000 bond. Then he murders 2 sisters and shoots a toddler. 3 separate victims, 3 different crime scenes, 1 preventable killing spree. The pattern was crystal clear to anyone paying attention. Smith was escalating, becoming bolder, more violent, more deadly with each attack. Every time the system failed to stop him, he got more confident that he could get away with murder. Stephen Daniels could have been saved if Smith had been properly sentenced for his earlier crimes. Deja and Abbaney could have been saved if Smith had been held without bond. Little Alan could have been spared his trauma if anyone in authority had done their job. Here's a statistic that will haunt you. 75% of domestic violence murders happen after the victim tries to leave. Experts call it the separation assault, the most dangerous time in any abusive relationship. Abbaney had left Jock Smith, and that made her a walking target. Every police officer, every judge, every prosecutor should know this. It's domestic violence 101. When a woman leaves her abuser, especially one with a violent criminal history, she needs maximum protection. Instead, the system handed Smith a $15,000 get-out-of-jail-free card. The bond system completely ignored established best practices for domestic violence cases. High-risk offenders like Smith should either be held without bond or monitored with GPS tracking, mandatory check-ins, and strict no-contact orders. None of that happened. But here's where it gets even more infuriating. Different agencies weren't talking to each other. Smith's probation officer apparently had no idea he'd been arrested for assaulting Abbaney. The judge setting his bond might not have known about his probation violations. The campus police had no clue a violent predator was stalking one of their students. This wasn't just one person dropping the ball. This was systematic failure at every level. The criminal justice system is supposed to have multiple safety nets to catch dangerous people like Smith. Instead, Every single net had holes big enough for a killer to slip through. Communication failures between agencies literally cost 3 people their lives. If just one person had connected the dots, if just one database had been properly updated, if just one official had done their job correctly, Deja and Abbaney would still be alive today. Texas A&M Commerce's security system didn't just fail. It became an accomplice to murder. The university spent thousands on electronic locks, key card readers, and access control technology. But all that fancy equipment meant nothing when it handed a killer the keys to his victims. How did Smith get that access card? The university has never explained it. Was it stolen? Cloned? Given to him by someone with legitimate access? The silence is deafening, and that silence tells you everything you need to know about how badly they screwed up. But here's the real kicker. Universities across the country have threat assessment protocols specifically designed to identify and neutralize dangers, like Jacques Smith. These programs are supposed to flag students or visitors who pose risks to campus safety. Smith should have been on every watch list imaginable. Instead, information sat in isolated silos. Campus police didn't know about Smith's criminal history. Student affairs had no idea Abbaney was being stalked by a violent ex-boyfriend. The residence hall staff was clueless about the danger walking through their doors. The university created a perfect storm of ignorance and negligence. They had all the technology in the world, but none of the intelligence to use it properly. They had procedures on paper, but no coordination in practice. Smith didn't outsmart their security system. He didn't need to. The system was so broken, so poorly managed, so completely dysfunctional that it practically invited him in and showed him exactly where to find his victims. The moment those gunshots stopped echoing through Pride Rock Residence Hall, Texas A&M Commerce went into damage control mode. Not grief counseling mode, not transparency mode, not accountability mode, cover your ass mode. The university's response to the grieving Matt's family was absolutely disgusting. Radio silence. No phone calls, no meetings, no explanations about how a killer got into their secure building. Timothy Matz and Vanessa Calderon were left to piece together their daughter's final moments from news reports and police statements. When the family desperately tried to get answers, they hit a brick wall of bureaucratic stonewalling. University officials hid behind lawyers, policies, and procedures. They treated grieving parents like hostile witnesses instead of victims who deserved the truth. Then came the legal immunity claims. The university basically said, "We're a state institution, so you can't sue us for getting your daughters killed." They used taxpayer-funded sovereign immunity as a shield to avoid taking responsibility for their catastrophic security failures. This wasn't just institutional incompetence. This was calculated cruelty. The same university that failed to protect Deja and Abbaney was now failing to provide their family with basic human decency. They were more concerned about protecting their reputation than honoring 2 murdered students. The cover-up sent a clear message. The university valued its legal liability more than the lives of its students. They would rather fight grieving parents in court than admit they screwed up and got people killed. Vanessa Calderon doesn't sleep anymore. Every night, she lies awake wondering if her daughter suffered, if they were scared, if they called out for help that never came. She replays that horrible phone call over and over, the one that shattered her world and told her both of her babies were gone. Timothy Matz is haunted by questions that will never have answers. Why didn't anyone warn them about Smith's violent history? Why wasn't there better security? Why did the system fail his girls so completely? He wakes up every morning hoping it was all a nightmare, then remembers it's his new reality. But the most heartbreaking victim in this whole tragedy is little Alan. This baby boy cries for his mommy, not understanding why she's never coming home. He points to pictures of Abbaney and Deja, asking when they're coming back to play with him. How do you explain murder to a toddler who witnessed it firsthand? Alan will grow up without his mother's hugs, without his aunt's laughter, without the 2 women who loved him most in this world. He'll carry physical and emotional scars from that night for the rest of his life. And his grandparents have to watch him suffer while knowing it was all preventable. The Matz family didn't just lose 2 daughters. They lost their sense of safety, their faith in institutions, their belief that good people are protected from evil. They're living a parent's worst nightmare with no end in sight. When the university refused to provide answers, the Matts family did what any desperate parents would do. They hired lawyers and filed a lawsuit. Not for money, not for revenge, but for the basic human right to know how their daughters died and why nobody protected them. The lawsuit demanded transparency about the university's security failures. How did Smith get access to the building? What protocols were supposed to prevent this? Who was responsible for keeping students safe? Simple questions that any decent institution would answer without being dragged to court. But Texas A&M Commerce had other plans. They immediately hid behind sovereign immunity, a legal doctrine that protects state institutions from lawsuits. Essentially, they argued that because they're funded by taxpayers, they can't be held accountable for getting taxpayers' children killed. Think about how twisted that logic is. The university takes your tax dollars, promises to keep your kids safe, fails catastrophically, and then uses your own tax-funded legal protections to avoid explaining what went wrong. The family wasn't asking for millions of dollars. They weren't trying to bankrupt the university. They just wanted basic information about their daughter's final moments and assurance that other families wouldn't suffer the same fate. Instead, they got lawyers, legal briefs, and bureaucratic warfare. The same institution that failed to protect Deja and Abbaney was now fighting tooth and nail to avoid taking responsibility for that failure. The cover-up became more important than the victims. This massacre was 100% preventable, and here's exactly how it could have been stopped. First, Jacques Smith should never have been released on bond after assaulting Abbaney. Domestic violence offenders with his criminal history should either be held without bond or monitored with GPS tracking 24/7. Second, the university needed proper threat assessment protocols. They should have flagged Smith the moment Abbaney reported his violence. Campus security should have been notified. Residence halls should have been alerted, and protective measures should have been implemented immediately. Third, the campus security system needed a complete overhaul. Access cards should be tracked in real time, with alerts for unusual activity. Temporary visitors should be monitored, not given free rein of secure buildings. And most importantly, different agencies needed to communicate with each other. These aren't revolutionary concepts. They're basic safety measures that universities and law enforcement agencies use every day. The technology exists, the protocols exist, the knowledge exists. What was missing was the will to implement them properly and the competence to coordinate between agencies. The red flags weren't just visible, they were screaming. Smith had a violent criminal history spanning multiple years. He was on probation for robbery when he assaulted Abbaney. He had a documented pattern of escalating violence against women. Every single warning sign that domestic violence experts use to predict lethal outcomes was flashing bright red. Multiple agencies had pieces of this puzzle. The courts knew about his criminal history. Probation officers knew about his violations. Campus police could have known about the domestic violence incident. But nobody connected the dots because nobody was looking at the big picture. This wasn't an unpredictable tragedy. It was a textbook case of intimate partner violence escalating to murder. Experts have studied thousands of cases exactly like this one. They know the warning signs. They know the patterns. They know how to intervene. The predictable nature of this unpredictable tragedy is what makes it so infuriating. Smith didn't hide his violence. He advertised it. The system just chose to ignore every single warning until it was too late to save 3 innocent lives. Deja and Abbaney Matts died because multiple systems designed to protect them failed catastrophically. Their deaths should teach us that domestic violence isn't a private matter. It's a public safety crisis that requires coordinated response from every level of government and institution. The changes needed aren't complicated. Better communication between agencies, stricter bond policies for violent offenders, comprehensive threat assessment on college campuses, and accountability when institutions fail to protect the people they serve. But right now, as you're watching this, there are other families at risk. Other women trying to escape violent partners. Other students trusting campus security systems that might be just as broken as the one that failed the Matts sisters. These sisters died because people in power failed them. Don't fail them again by scrolling past without subscribing. Every subscription sends a message that victim stories matter, that their lives had value, that their deaths demand accountability. Hit that subscribe button right now and tell me in the comments what shocked you most about this case. Was it the $15,000 bond, the security system that enabled murder, the university's cover-up? And to those of you who won't subscribe, I want you to look at Timothy Matt's face and explain to him why his daughter's story isn't worth 30 seconds of your time. Go ahead, I'll wait.